Our top story this hour: as the Russia-Ukraine conflict continues to escalate, the United States has now issued a stern warning to China, saying that it will face harsh consequences if it helps Moscow evade the West-imposed sanctions. The development comes ahead of a crucial high-stakes meeting between U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan and the Chinese Communist Party's Politburo member Yang Jiechi. Our next report has all the details. Take a look.
U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan warned Beijing that they would absolutely face consequences if it helped Moscow evade sweeping sanctions over the war in Ukraine. Sullivan's comments come as he is due to meet with China's top diplomat Yang Jiechi in Rome on Monday. In comments to CNN, Sullivan said that the United States believed China was aware that Russia was planning some action in Ukraine before the invasion took place, although Beijing may not have understood the full extent of what was planned. Now, according to Sullivan, Washington was watching closely to see to what extent Beijing provided economic or material support to Russia and would impose consequences if that occurred. He added, quote, "We will not allow that to go forward and allow there to be a lifeline to Russia from these economic sanctions from any country anywhere in the world." Meanwhile, Russia said on Sunday that it was counting on China to help it withstand the blow to its economy from Western sanctions. Western countries have imposed unprecedented sanctions on Russia's corporate and financial system since it invaded Ukraine on February 24th in what it calls a special military operation. Russia and China have tightened cooperation in recent times, as both have come under strong Western pressure over human rights and a raft of other issues. Beijing has not condemned Russia's attack on Ukraine and does not call it an invasion, but it has urged a negotiated solution.
And for more on this, joining us live from California is international affairs expert Stephen Golub. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, how do you assess these warnings by the United States with China?
It's a very serious matter on a number of levels. The big story, the big economic story, is if U.S. and China start bumping heads over trade relations, other economic relations as a result of this war, it could have ramifications, big ripple effects, not just for the Chinese and U.S. societies, but around the world, including for India. There are also some interesting military aspects to this story. Reportedly, if the reports are true, Russia has been asking China for some military aid, whether it be equipment or armaments or whatever, we don't know. But if that's the case, it comes as something of a big surprise that Russia, even at this stage of the war, would need some outside military equipment that its stockpiles are running low. And it raises questions about the extent to which Russia could sustain the war, or at least sustain the occupation, if and when, as seems likely, it does take over much of Ukraine.
Right. Now, also China and Russia, as we know, have a no-limits partnership. Now, what can you tell us about China's role in this ongoing conflict?
Well, so far, as far as we know, it's been offering all sorts of diplomatic support, communications, public relations support, backing Russia's claims about how it had been provoked by Ukraine, how Ukraine was being run by a kind of a Nazi government, which is really ironic given that the President Zelensky of Ukraine is Jewish, and other Russia, frankly, propaganda. China's been backing that up. The bigger picture here is actually that China, in the relation between the two countries, China is really the big brother now. It's a much more significant economy, a much bigger presence on the world stage. Russia is almost in some ways a vassal state, dependent on China in some ways, and given the realities of how this war may unfold, it may become even more dependent on China.
Right. Now also let's come to the talks now. Yang Jiechi and Jake Sullivan are set to hold high-stakes talks. What can we expect on that front? What are some of the key issues that they will touch on during these talks, do you think?
Well, in terms of the outcome, your guess is as good as mine. I'm hopeful that President Xi of China takes a more rational view of this whole affair than Mr. Putin has. And in fact, I think we know that President Xi is probably someone more in command of the facts and some good cold hard calculations of what's in his country's national interest. However, what will he decide is in his country's national interest? Is it to Is it to split even further from decent, if not warm, relations with the U.S. and the West and Japan and Australia and other countries for that matter? Or is it try to keep things, maintain matters, at least in a decent way, for the good of the world economy and especially his own economy, which could suffer a lot if, in fact, there's a rupture in economic relations between these two sides?
All right. Mr. Goel, thank you so much for joining us with all your inputs on this.
Thank you.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.